Chapter 2, Section 1 of the Greek View of Life by Goldsworthy Lowes Dickinson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Martin Geeson. Chapter 2. The Greek View of the State. Section 1. The Greek State a City. The present kingdom of Greece is among the smallest of European states, but to the Greeks it would have appeared too large to be a state at all. Within that little peninsula, whose whole population and wealth are so insignificant according to modern ideas, were comprised in classical times not one but many flourishing polities, and the conception of an amalgamation of these under a single government was so foreign to the Greek idea that even to Aristotle, the clearest and most comprehensive thinker of his age, it did not present itself even as a dream. To him, as to every ancient Greek, the state meant the city, meant, that is to say, an area about the size of an English county, with a population perhaps of some 100,000, self-governing and independent of any larger political whole. If we can imagine the various county councils of England emancipated from the control of Parliament and set free to make their own laws, manage their own finance and justice, raise troops, and form with one another alliances, offensive and defensive, we may form thus some general idea of the political institutions of the Greeks, and some measure of their difference from our own. Nor must it be supposed that the size of the Greek state was a mere accident in its constitution, that it might have been indefinitely enlarged and yet regained its essential character. On the contrary, the limitation of size belonged to its very notion. The greatest state, says Aristotle, is not the one whose population is most numerous. On the contrary, after a certain limit of increase has been passed, the state ceases to be a state at all. 10 men are too few for a city. 100,000 are too many. Not only London, it seems, but every one of our larger towns would have been too big for the Greek idea of a state; and as for the British Empire, the very conception of it would have been impossible to the Greeks. Clearly, their view on this point is fundamentally different from our own. Their civilisation was one of city-states, not of kingdoms and empires, and their whole political outlook was necessarily determined by this condition. Generalising from their own experience, they had formed for themselves a conception of the state not the less interesting to us that it is unfamiliar, and this conception it will be the business of the present chapter to illustrate and explain. End of chapter 2, section 1. Recording by Martin Geeson in Haslemere, Surrey.